I am resident of Collinwood, Jules Sains for YouTube, joined by my buddy Butch Rosenbalm and my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to discuss the movie Warlock from 1959. It stars Richard Widmark, Henry Fonda, and Anthony Quinn. Little fun note, Henry Fonda and Anthony Quinn were in the movie The Oxbow Incident together. Now Anthony Quinn was not a main character. He was one of the side characters, one of the characters that got hung in that movie. But this movie, he does not get hung. So, when did you guys first see?
Joel, I think you mean hang.
Hanged, yeah. One of the other. When did you guys first see this movie?
When I first saw Warlock, probably back in the late 70s, and it reminds me, or rather, I didn't think about it for a long time. Although occasionally the Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp thing would sort of come up in my mind when I would think about Warlock. But I really thought about it. I saw Appaloosa with Ed Harris, which, gosh darn, feels almost like a remake of it in a lot of thematic and spiritual ways. But yeah, okay, I'm just kidding. I saw that on some YouTube videos. I Warlock about 2 hours ago. It was good.
Well,
but I faked it really well. And that's
you
how
did.
you make it an act. Yeah, continue.
I can't hate to say it, but the first time I saw it was about a week ago. I mean, I was, I'd see it all the time on Grit and whatnot. For whatever reason, I just hadn't watched it, and I kept thinking, this has got Henry Fonda in it, and I really like Henry Fonda in westerns. One of my, we'll get into it, but I kept thinking I really enjoy this, and I did.
I first saw this when I was a kid, obviously. I watched this with my grandfather, who watched Westerns on Saturdays, and it was on AMC. But it was not my first Western I watched, but it won't be my last. I really enjoyed Richard Widmark as the star of this movie. He really stands out really well. Richard Widmark's been in some notable movies and really carried movies well. What did you guys think of him here?
He was younger. I don't know if I've seen a movie with Richard Widmark with him this young. I'm used to him looking older. And so I looked it up on IMDb, and that actually meant that this was made before the other Richard Widmark movies I saw. I liked it. It was really the first Richard Widmark that I went to, and I think he was a good, solid lead. He managed to have the right kind of rough edge to play against sort of the polish of Henry Fonda without obviously being a bad guy. And I think that's a very careful bit of casting and a good bit of casting, because all these guys, this is full of people that we've seen a million times before. Just one of these Western stock players. But my God, that is where you get the good part of casting, where when you have an actor who A, does something really well, and B, needs no translation for the audience, where the audience sees this person and goes, oh, it's this guy. Oh, this is the part. That's not a bad thing. That means that your storytelling is off to the races.
Yeah. Butch, what did you think of Richard Widmark's performance?
Well, I find it interesting. Both of you refer to him as the lead, and I always thought he was the second banana. And to me, it was Henry Fonda. But that being said, yeah, he did great. I mean, he is. I totally agree with everything what Patrick just said, but I probably won't say it anywhere near as eloquent or as intelligent. He is, to me, he's the kind of guy. He's kind of a blue collar. He shows up. He does, he does his thing. He does it well, and he goes home. He's unfortunately not the type of actor to get a lot of, oh my God, Richard Widmark's in this. You're more like, sometimes you don't even notice him, and you're just like, oh yeah, he did really good in that. And yeah, but like I agree, he is the great counterpoint to Henry Fonda in this.
Butch, let me ask you a question. why do you think Richard Widmark got billing above Henry Fonda?
I would say because
he wasn't.
What's that?
Because what?
Because he wasn't a dirty commie. And then I said, I'm just.
Or related to any of them?
You know, Henry Fonda's always been those left wing, always preaching at me about, you know, I don't know, something about the Korean War. Who knows? Joel, what do you think?
I think that Richard Widmark was destined to be a star, and so they built him as one in this movie. I'm not trying to compare Richard Widmark to Jean-Claude Van Damme or to the movie I'm going to mention here. But Cannon Films made a movie called Cyborg.
I love that you just said that.
Jean-Claude Van Damme made a movie called Cyborg that was made by Cannon Pictures. Well, the director was messing things up, and Cannon Films took it upon themselves to call Jean-Claude Van Damme, and they said, Jean-Claude, you're a star. You want to be a bigger star. We want you to be a bigger star. Why don't you take over direction of this movie? And Jean-Claude did just that, and it was a success. So, but now Richard Widmark didn't do that here. He didn't take over the direction, but this is where the studio wants Richard Widmark to be in the top billing and be a star and be a big star. And who do they put under him? Henry Fonda, who's a big name. It's an odd comparison. I apologize for the odd comparison. And Anthony Quinn, by the way, has been in some films. Anthony Quinn has been in some films, too, that he's really taken control over. And I love Anthony Quinn's performance here as this sort of shady, grayish character. And he turns out to be as much of a heel in this movie as, well, your heel. And
yeah, but what about the character played?
What did you guys think of Anthony Quinn's performance in this movie?
He was just ethnic enough. He was just ethnic enough for movie at that time to make him unpredictable and a touch of the exotic. Because even that reads, you know, even that has a message to audiences. That he can be a little more freewheeling, a little more morally loose. All of these things had what we call semiotic impact, which is semiotics just signs. And so it's a sign to the audience to look at a character a certain way. And for audiences at the time, yeah, he was the loose cannon, you know. You know, I was about to make a William Conrad a suppository joke, but no, he's the loose cannon.
Yeah, loose cannon.
Try to dig your way out of that one, Jewel.
Not even going to try.
Butch, help him out.
You know,
I mentioned William Conrad's suppository. He's frozen. Bitch on the data.
He obviously had fun with this role. But then I think he has fun with most other roles that sorry, you see him in. He one thing
up the plates.
You're fading in and out. I didn't hear that.
It was irrelevant twaddle. Like anything I
Anthony Quinn's character, whose name is escaping me at the moment, but that's not hard to do. He kept making me think of Ernest Borgnine's character Dutch in The Wild Bunch, and his seemingly more than friendship with the male character. In this case, Henry Fonda in Wild Bunch, William Holden.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a very good tone, like underlying tone of this movie that Clay Blaisdell, who's played by Henry Fonda, Anthony Quinn's character protects Henry Fonda's character from back shooters and people who try to shoot him from behind. But there's a very strange friendship to the two. You could sort of say Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp if you wanted to, but you do get the sense that Anthony Quinn's character loves Clay in every way. That he, again, I'm not saying that's going on in this movie in a sense, but he does care for Clay and does love him. Like, and it's not. I'm not going to sit here and say it's like a brother either, because I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Stephen Boyd said that Gore Vidal could not get the screenplay for this movie off the ground.
Really?
Until Clay and Masala were written as lovers. No, that's the Ben-Hur story. Sorry. There is a strange tone at the end of the movie when Henry Fonda throws down his guns and is approaching Richard Widmark. And even my father, born in 1940, in the best of all ways, said, "What are they going to do? Kiss?" Because it looked like he was approaching him for a kiss. So there's some of that energy going on. I think that's why DeForest Kelley cut out when he did. He's, I'm not part of this kind of party. I'm out of here. I don't know what sort of movie you boys are making, but and movie Warlock and Uncle Arthur's going to show up.
Yeah, DeForest Kelley is in this movie. He actually has some really cool lines in this movie. He's the first person who tries to draw on Blaisdell, and Blaisdell gets a quicker draw on him. It's really interesting, this theme of this movie, because here's this town that gets these poor substitutes as deputy sheriffs, if you will, because they're not sheriffs, they're deputy sheriffs. And the head marshal or sheriff keeps deputizing pretty much what you might want to say is bad sheriffs. Not necessarily bad people, but just people who aren't fit for the job. And we've talked about movies like that where there are characters who just aren't fit for certain jobs. Will Penny was one of them, where there was this character who was taking a woman and a young boy across the country, and he just wasn't cut out for the job. But with this, you get the sense right away in the beginning of the movie, the gang comes in and they basically force the sheriff out of town. That's how this movie really starts really well. And you're sort of like, wow, was the sheriff scared, or did the sheriff realize, hey, they were gonna cheat to win, they were gonna shoot me in the back, I was gonna die no matter what. And I love how you learn it later on. This is really what sets Johnny Gannon apart from his brother Billy, who's played by Dennis Hopper, the late Dennis Hopper. I apologize, but here's Richard Widmark, he's more examining what's going on, not just participating in it. What do you guys think? Go ahead.
He is Uatu in this story.
The Watcher. He has the biggest character arc at the very beginning, because you see him, he's getting disgusted with what the Cowboys are doing, and you may not know right away, but things are going to change. That's the one thing I always like in really any kind of movie. You see a character who's, we see his life and he's not happy with it, and we see change for the positive anyway, even if it looks like it's not going to be necessarily too positive. But I mean, just right away, Richard Widmark's character gets your attention, truthfully, even more than Henry Fonda's Blaisdell, because one of the things I really like about Henry Fonda, when he he's coming into town, he's just almost robotic. He's just very smooth walking. It's almost like he's in the Hall of Presidents down at Disney, and he just doesn't. It's not like, oh my god. It's just like, yeah, I want to kill you too.
Yeah.
Butch, Henry Fonda in this movie versus Yul Brynner, not in Magnificent Seven, but in Westworld, who wins?
Henry wins first, but since Yul Brynner's gunslinger will keep coming, he'll eventually get him.
I will politely, I do this very rarely, I will politely disagree.
Go right
I
ahead.
give the Fonda because Henry Fonda, I think, has more lateral thinking skills. Henry Fonda would outsmart him somehow. If Richard Benjamin can outsmart him, Henry Fonda can outsmart him. Henry Fonda movie, and between him and Anthony Quinn, it's a good cravat movie. Because normally the fancy duds are for the bad guy. Yeah. And in this one, Henry Fonda's in the fancy duds, and he's not taking prisoners. You know, and but it does make me want to watch Once Upon a Time in the West, which is an interesting movie because it's the only Western where the plot revolves around Charles Bronson's mustache being stolen and him going on a vendetta to track it down across the West and find it and be reunited with it. And he calls it Debbie. It's been a scar. He puts it over the scar because he thinks it'll disguise it. And he calls it Debbie and he takes it home. And why kill Barber at the beginning? Man, that's rough. I would have their hair looking worse and worse as the movie goes on. They should have called it. It shouldn't have been about calling in a extra lawman. It should have been calling in the toughest barber in the West.
Don Knotts.
That's just Don Knotts is the Terminator.
The shakiest razor in the West. Sorry, Joel.
There's a Disney movie called The World's Moil that was a Western that he was in, where he performed bris after bris blindfolded.
To your point, there's a scene in Once Upon a Time in the West where you see Charles Bronson's eye looks a little messed up. Now there's a director's cut of Once Upon a Time in the West where the sheriff's men beat up harmonica in the bar. So I know most people haven't seen that version, and the only reason I was lucky enough to see that version is because I was shown it at the goddamn library. Thank you, Uniontown Library. So it's really, if you could find it, great, because I believe it should be in there. It better be in there. It was in there when I watched it. But so that's why you see his eye that's like it. Now back to Warlock for you guys. You're right. Fonda's character is he's one of the most, it's not that he's just fast. He's one of the most intelligent gunslingers I've seen in a Western. When he doesn't go to kill Billy right away, Billy Gannon, played by Dennis Hopper, he shoots his friend first, and then he tells Billy, just walk away. And that moment right there lets you know Blaisdell knows he's faster than you. It reminds me of a story that I've heard from wrestling where Butterbean was going to box
the story
a wrestler, and he knew he knew how powerful he was. He knew he could hurt the wrestler, and he told Bruce Pritchard, he goes, do you want me to work the match? And now the person interviewing Bruce Pritchard at the time, because Bruce Pritchard was the person who sat at gorilla position. He told the wrestlers to go out to the ring. And he said, the interviewer said, well, was he willing to lose? He goes, no, I don't think he was willing to lose, but he was damn sure willing to work because he didn't want to hurt Bart Gunn. And Vince McMahon said, nope, I don't want you to work. And well, it was a real fight.
Well, there you go. What was Butterbean's best match? Oh, I'm sorry, Butch. What were you going to say?
That was a question that came to mind towards the end of the film when we have the showdown between Anthony Quinn and Henry Fonda, and the implication kind of is, well, at least one that kind of took away was maybe Blaisdell wasn't as good as he thought because Anthony Quinn was, running around and catching people that were trying to shoot him in the back. maybe sending him up against lesser talent like the brother of the man from Texas. Yes, obviously he's good. I'm not trying to say he's not, but the implication to me was maybe Anthony Quinn was helping him out a little bit.
The implication in the movie you're talking about is really well profound too, because Anthony Quinn catches wind that somebody's coming to a stagecoach, and it's the brother of the man Blaisdell beating a duel. Anthony Quinn set up that duel. Anthony Quinn, in every way, is your real antagonist in this movie in a lot of ways. My one critique of Warlock is they did not need the gang as an antagonist, but it wasn't necessarily senseless though either, because Anthony Quinn is just so menacing at times. When he's on the range holding that rifle, you see the gang, like Billy Gannon and the other guy, like when the one guy gets shot, they're like looking at each other like they know they didn't do it, and they leave.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree there. You did need the gang. Otherwise, Anthony Quinn's true villain nature, if you will, has to come out a lot quicker. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why he kept encouraging Blaisdell to move from town to town, because he's not having to hang around at the scene of the crime, if you will, and get caught.
To your point too, when they get to town shortly after, I don't know how immediate it is, but it's pretty immediate, where they show a rumor, they call them the rattlesnake or black snake or something, rattlesnake or something like that.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
And so you're right. The gang is needed to sort of camouflage somewhat of Quinn's alter ego. I don't want to say alter ego, but it sort of feels like an alter ego.
His true side.
Yep, his true side. Go ahead, Patrick.
From town to town, up and down the dock. Maybe you and me was never meant to be, but maybe think of me just once in a while. I'll be at WKRP in Cincinnati. Continue. I also have thoughts on the whole. Well, I was going to make a Greek joke. So he's protecting him from behind, correct?
Yeah. Anthony Quinn's character shoots the guy who's coming into town he wants to duel Blaisdell. And the reason he wants him to duel Blaisdell and not Anthony Quinn's character is because the woman involved was in love with the man who Blaisdell beat in the duel. So this woman recruits his brother, and Quinn gets wind of it. He sets up with a rifle. And the gang, actually, the reason it's stagecoach gets stopped, the gang stops the stagecoach and they rob them. And keep in mind, the gang isn't trying to kill them because they're wearing their bandanas and stuff to camouflage their face. And so they're going to let them live. And here comes Anthony Quinn's character, and he just shoots the guy at cold blood. And they're like, oh, shit, we didn't do that. And they didn't. I'll give the gang credit. They didn't kill this dude, but they just hightail it out of there because they don't want nothing to do with that. That wasn't their plan or motive. Their plan was just to steal the money, and they did that. But when Quinn gets back and the guy's been shot, the woman goes into the town of Warlock, and she knows it was Quinn's character. She knows that it was him that did it, and because she goes, I want to see Blaisdell dead. I want to see you hurt. And this is where you get Anthony Quinn's character's answer of why he does what he does. And he says, because Blaisdell never looked at me like a cripple. And it's one of those, it's somewhat touching, but it's somewhat sadistic too. It's like, I get the guy walks around with a limp, but it's like, it's not exactly like he's helpless though either. God, sorry.
I think Patrick might have froze again. Yeah, there's an interesting range of skills. You look at games where, role-playing games and such where you have stats. It would be interesting to see all the stats of Anthony Quinn, Blaisdell, Richard Widmark.
Yeah.
And just compare out of curiosity, who was the fastest and who was the better shot. And while you're talking about the woman Lily who comes in, Dorothy Malone, let me state my appreciation of her in this film and pretty much every other film I've seen her in. There's somebody else that shows up, does their job, and goes home, and sometimes you may not even realize what a good job they did.
Yep.
I mean, she shows up, she sells everything she's in this film. You believe it. And it's not that she's necessarily, at least this is my interpretation. It's not that she was necessarily angry, but of course she was at Blaisdell, but she was doing it more to hurt Anthony Quinn's character, which also ties back in. We find out that Anthony Quinn and her were a couple beforehand.
Yeah. Patrick, are you there?
Are you back yet? Yeah, you were frozen for the longest time. I expected to hear you singing, "Would you like to make a snowman?" Seriously, you were frozen. Was I frozen?
Yes.
Was I Elsa?
No, I don't think.
I like Elsa.
Pretty sure you were Anna.
Oh, I was right here.
What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on the character of Lily?
Thank you.
What's that?
Yeah, Lily. Yvonne DiCarlo's marvelous. What are we talking? You froze for a long time. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Lily rides into town with the brother of the guy who got shot. The guy who got shot had a brother. She rides into town to duel with Blaisdell. Quinn's character hears about that they're coming into town. The stagecoach gets stopped by the gang. Quinn shoots the guy. The gang goes away with the money. Lily, the woman, rides into town, and she confronts Quinn's character about shooting the man. She knows it was Quinn's character. I mean, she was around him. She was, like Butch said, she was going to marry him or in love with him at one point.
That isn't. Anthony Quinn's not settling down, not while there are plates to smash. We all know this. Zorba.
Yeah.
I think that's
What was you guys' favorite part in this movie?
I like the monologue that Henry Fonda gives about the first time he shot a man.
Yeah.
That was good.
That's a good
I'm not gonna lie.
It's a part of the movie.
My favorite part.
And I like the delays or something, Joel. There's a lot of delays tonight.
I know. I apologize.
My favorite part, truthfully, DeForest Kelly.
Did it occur to you that this is a big holodeck adventure for Dr. McCoy that he has to cut out of early because they're getting attacked by the Gorn or something?
Yeah, the safety protocols have fallen, and he doesn't want to get killed. But truthfully, I grew up watching, the original Star Trek. That's what I know DeForest Kelly from. I mean, I knew he had made other films, so anytime he pops up in a Western, I just enjoy it. And he seemed to be having so much fun in this film. Why, Marshall, we're going to have to kill you. And then they're going to hire somebody and they're going to kill us. And then it's just going to be a whole big mess. And he seems to be having so much fun with it. And I just really appreciate that.
This is the best non-Star Trek acting I've seen him do since Night of the Lepus. There's science in the movie, Butch.
I like I like how they're having a town meeting, and when DeForest Kelly's character walks in, he's like, "Oh, you're having a meeting."
I'd like to see McCoy do that during staff meetings on the Enterprise. A drink in his hand. Oh, you're having a meeting, Jim? Well, I suppose I'll attend. Got 3 guys bleeding to death in sick bay, but I know bureaucracy's so important, so here I am. Now, Mr. Spock, what's so important about Ash's anomaly? Stop eating Nurse Chapel's clomeek soup, I'm telling you.
McCoy would have made the best Trill.
McCoy would have made the best Trill?
Yeah.
Sure. Sure, Doctor, I see spots. So do I.
God. Oh,
it's kind of funny you say that. Not really related, but in my mind related, in the so-called Shatnerverse of series of novels that William Shatner and Judith and Garfield Reed Stevens wrote. They're working with the EMH from Voyager, and Kirk's like, wait a minute, and he goes over and he types it, pulls it up, and comes to find out that one of the main influences on the EMH is Dr. McCoy. And that's why he's kind of grumpy like McCoy, and even kind of, I think he makes it look like McCoy for a while before the Admiral himself shows up in the novel.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency, damn it. Imagine how Bones would deal with Jadzia and Worf coming in with all their injuries. The smile on his face would be so big. And listen, I'm not trying to be catty, but if you Terry Farrell lately, she looks more and more like Adam Nimoy every day. And Adam Nimoy looks a little bit more like Terry Farrell every day. They will be indistinguishable soon. And God bless them.
I hate to agree with it, but I think you're right.
It's true. I saw a picture the other day, and it's like she's grafted parts of him onto her. And good news, he's a handsome man.
You know, the first time I saw a picture of Adam Nimoy as an adult, I looked at him like, God, there's no denying who your father is. And I didn't even look who it was or what it was about. It was just, yep, I know whose kid you are.
Wasn't George Takei's. Anyway.
Oh my God.
Sorry, we're derailing Warlock again.
Here's a fun one for you. You could put any Star Trek character in a Western. Who would you put?
Who wasn't associated with Westerns due to an episode where we naturally associate them with Westerns.
There you go.
Okay. Now, do you mean as a character? Do you mean like their character could survive best in the Old West, or their character would be most interesting in a Western, or what?
Whatever category you want to pick. It's you guys' choice.
Well, I mean, Cisco is a Western character.
Yeah, he's
coming in and taking over an effed up town. So that's almost low-hanging fruit, according to Cassidy. But seriously, that's his. But seriously, oh boy, that's a good question. Well, it wouldn't be Harry Kim, and it wouldn't be Neelix or anyone on Voyager. Trip. I think Trip is just, he's got the accent. So I think Trip is good for it. Trip and Malcolm coming into a town, and because Malcolm would have all the gadgets and fancy weapons, and Trip would have the charm. It's Wild Wild West. Cast those two guys in Wild Wild West and call it a day.
Imagine a young, we have to use some CGI here. A young William Shatner is Wyatt Earp. And the guy that played Malcolm's real name is escaping me. Imagine him as Doc Holliday.
You're thinking Dominic
Keating? Those two as Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday.
Okay. Mark Alimo for anything.
Yeah.
Which is what I say during, election season also. Anything. Mark Alimo's my president.
Dr. Bashir and Cole Meany's character from DS9, because they would often go into the holosuites and reenact historical moments. And,
They did.
or
We're just reenacting history, Keiko. Listen, this is how the Greeks were. We're going to battle of Thermopylae.
well, listen.
The week before.
Listen. When your wife like Keiko is a shrill bitch, you're gonna go anywhere other than with her. But
you know what, Jewel? You wouldn't know about that because your wife is a wonderful person.
That is true. But still, I've watched DS9. I've seen Keiko. But
it's chow time, baby. Rosalind chow. The nurse. Or Nurse Ogawa. She was a nurse all over the place. She was Jamie Farr's wife in MASH. And then wasn't she also Nurse Ogawa? Or did I just do something horrible?
No. She was not Ogawa.
Thank goodness. Thank
but
goodness.
She was on Next Gen.
Keiko was like Keiko Ogawa. And
yeah,
then
DS9 did get a gem in her joining the cast because she was a very well accomplished actress and had a lot of credits to her name by the time.
I watched Space Rangers at the time. I only heard about the Star Trek stuff 3 weeks ago. You got to give me a break. I was a Time Tracks man. Remember Time?
I remember Shining Time Station with George Carlin. But
what was that?
Really, you don't know what that was?
No, I was too busy watching reruns of Butterbean Wrestling.
Okay.
I was a Butterbean man, Ron.
Oh my God. George Carlin was a comedian, obviously, and Shining Time Station was Thomas the Tank Engine on daytime TV. And yes, George Carlin was your conductor host, the comedian.
What?
Okay.
Yeah.
I never watched.
Joel, are you pulling a Patrick on me?
No, I'll send you a link when we get done here to a YouTube video. But yeah, George Carlin, when he wasn't doing full-time comedy at this point. He wasn't retired, but his agent had contacted him about this role for Shining Time Station. That's what it was called. It wasn't called Thomas the Tank Engine. It's called Shining Time Station. But Thomas the Tank Engine was a part of it. And he was the conductor host. He had a little conductor outfit and stuff, and he was very tiny. Really, he was really entertaining. So as a kid,
I would love to see outtakes of that.
This is a creepypasta, right? You could see this, and the other kids could see it, but no one else could, and they couldn't track it down. This is Channel Zero, Season 1. Code, right? Oh, I swear George Carlin's on. Keep going. Did you guys see that first season of? Do you know what I'm talking about? Based on a story by like Peter Straub's son or something, or daughter, or one of them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh, this is one of the great like creepypastas that got turned into the first season of the best like the thinking person's American Horror Story. Season 1 of Channel Zero, Candle Cove, about this children's show that doesn't really exist and surrounds all these kids' murders, and everybody comes back 10 years later, like 20 years. It's really good. You need to look this up. It's
Channel Zero.
It's a scary TV. I've seen, since the Sports Illustrated B. Arthur swimsuit issue behind the scenes. No, I'm serious. It's really good. Channel Zero is made by Sci-Fi. It was their answer to American Horror Story.
Oh.
Yeah. They said, "Hey, what if we did American Horror Story and made it good?" And you get Channel Zero.
Is this still on TV or?
Channel Zero. I don't know when they did their last season, but I mean, Joel, this is almost Archive 81 level. Good anthology, modern anthology horror. I'm serious. Look it up, because I had heard the creepypasta for a few years that was based on the Straub story. Yeah. And then they made a series out of it. And yeah, I mean the villain is an evil spirit who's made of nothing but a suit of children's stolen teeth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's where it starts on being disturbing.
Looks like it's on Prime.
Ooh.
Joel, I'm serious. This is really good stuff. I'm not pulling a whopper on this one. It's good.
Is it available on DVD, or are they still running the season, Butch? Do you know?
Looked like it was still, or at least potentially running.
Okay. I'll definitely try to check it out. But is there anything you guys want to add about Warlock?
What? Warlock? What's that?
Yeah, what's that? What's that movie? Oh, God.
You want to dance? I want a polka.
I tell you something about this movie that Patrick hit on, and I'm going to go with it a little bit further. This has a hell of a cast.
Yes.
This has probably a better cast than it maybe even deserves, and this is a really good film. I enjoyed it. But you even if you will, the bit characters or bit. You got DeForest Kelly, you got Whit Bissell. I mean, you've got plenty of good actors here, and everybody's doing a good job. Tells an interesting story. I know I say these things every Western, but this was just. I mean, it's a good film. It's good to watch. Enjoyable, and unlike some films that I've seen recently, I'll watch this again.
Oh, you mean the ones I recommended? Hey, Butch. By the way, do you know what you call the victims of vampires who only acted for a day in Hammer movies? Bit players.
Or was that bike players?
Exactly. Joel, let me tell you something.
Good.
On everything I could to have a sane, sober, scholarly discussion with you about this film. And all you've done is take it into strange, rambling asides, and I give up. I have done what I could to keep you on the straight and narrow, and clearly it's just not going to happen. So, Warlock. Joe Bob says check it out.
Well, here's what I'll say about Warlock, too. When you watch the movie, Richard Widmark's character does not, he very much even though he's a part of the town, he feels very much like an outsider. Even before he's ever made deputy sheriff, he's not just observing, he's observing the antagonistic way of certain people, like Anthony Quinn's character. He's observing even observing Henry Fonda's Clay Blaisdell. Again, like you guys point out, he's watching. And it's something that the town people themselves, they do watch, but they don't quite observe and watch the way Richard Widmark's character does.
No, they watch, but they don't see.
Right, exactly. Thank you. That's the point I was trying to make.
And he watches, and the character's name escaped me. The leader of the gang that he was in.
Yep.
He well, I guess maybe you're not watching him so much because he knows him inside and out. So yeah. You're right. He's very much an outsider.
Anthony Quinn knows someone inside and out? Okay.
Something like that. Richard Widmark does.
Okay.
But it is a very enjoyable movie. It's a movie I watched as a kid, and I'll watch it now, and I got to watch it on Tubi. It's very, very good, and the cast is amazing. It is. It's a very well cast Western.
I think a good idea of what sort of A-level, because it was filmed in CinemaScope, what A-level studio kind of non-A production was. It's interesting to follow it up, to follow The Searchers with it. Yeah. Because The Searchers is a movie that it's not really fair to say, now a typical Western from the time. But this was made 3 years later, and it's a good movie. It's a solid movie. And I think it's just from an historical point of view, it's a good film to see, to say, okay, this is what The Searchers was bouncing off of, but that doesn't make it bad. It's kind of like watching Die Hard and then Tango and Cash.
Yeah.
and saying Tango and Cash is what Die Hard was sort of bouncing off of. But I love Tango and Cash.
Yeah.
Would you say that The Searchers little more cerebral, tells a different story, and this is maybe since we talked about it with Anthony Quinn, Searchers was a little more exotic, and this was a little more hamburger and fries as opposed to.
But very good hamburger and fries.
Oh yes, I'm not insulting it, but this is like more what the average Western fan would be expecting. I mean, some of them are. I'm sure there are people that have watched The Searchers and are like, "That's it."
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, the points just go over their head.
I can guarantee you there were legions of kids and husbands who walked out of this movie saying, "Thank God, that's more like it."
Yeah, that's basically my point. It's like, yeah, this is what we want to see. Sorry,
guys. You guys made some really great points. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
Well, yeah. Looker. A certain fan of yours who's very lovely and who is very much looking forward to a discussion about Looker with you and Butch.
We are going to do Looker next Saturday. It's not a Western, is it? No, is it?
We can watch it any day of the week you want.
Well,
on what day of the week do you have set aside for Susan Day movies?
They're all filled up with LA Law reruns.
Wait, okay. Because I want to get both of you guys on here for this movie. So you guys pick the day.
We can do it next Saturday. I mean, you know, if we're going to, we cannot disappoint Jules' fan.
I know.
So how about next Saturday, our usual time?
10:30.
10:30, as I keep trying to tell you, and not 11.
Well, okay. Well, 10:30 tomorrow for the Dark Shadows podcast, Mr. McCray, sir.
Okay, fine. 10:30 tomorrow. Whatever you say. It'd be 5 a.m. I'll be up. I'll be ready.
You'll
pull that one out, pal.
You'll see me driven through the table. Patrick will powerbomb me. I'll be just laying out like.
No way.
I'm going to. I want to. Joel and I were talking before you came on, Patrick. When you all were doing the Three Musketeers films, and I was really enjoying your commentary. And I'm going to now officially chastise Joel and you slightly. It's Sir Christopher Lee, not just Christopher Lee. It's Sir Christopher Lee.
Butch, if you were any right, you would be left. You are correct, and it is really, and God save me. And
but I enjoyed everything you.
The greatest swordsman in all of England, and the greatest,
at least in film. But I really enjoyed your all's comment on it.
He knows what it sounds like when a man's throat is cut.
When he sat back too.
Why you put him down?
Guys, it is always a blast bringing you both on. I enjoy it very much. We will be back next Saturday for the movie Looker at 10:30. Tomorrow, me and Patrick will be doing the Dark Shadows tomorrow night. But Butch, Patrick, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Butch, buddy, Patrick, God bless.
Take care. Sorry for all the coughing.
It's okay. Good night, guys.